The Terror of Greenland, the Unseen Beast. These are the stories of the Amarok. And I made him into a sweet, sweet felty boy. Very spooky, very fabulous. Now, on to a brief trigger warning and some fun little stories. In the frozen region of Greenland, there once lived an orphan boy named Kagsegsuk. He lived alongside his poor foster mother, described as a miserable old woman. Nearly every man, woman, and child abused him, as he was the smallest and weakest of the village. Kagsegsuk and his foster mother lived in a shed adjoined to a winter hut. They were forbidden from entering the hut and forced to stay in the shed. To find warmth at night, he would lay in the passage between the shed and the hut, alongside the dogs. The crack of the whip would rouse the dogs awake and sting as it woke him. Kagsegsuk used to watch the men feast over the threshold that he could not climb. The only way the men would help him over is by lifting him by the nostrils. This is why they say that Kagsegsuk never grew except for his nostrils. When they gave him meat, it would be frozen, and without a way to cut it, they forced him to only use his teeth. The men would pull out his teeth, complaining that he ate too much. He did not get to go out and play like the other children, as when his foster mother made him shoes and a small spear so he may go out, the other children would harass him, filling his clothes with snow. One day, Kagsegsuk attempted to find solace from his despair by venturing the mountains alone. It does not say if he knew what he was trying to summon as he stood between the two high mountains, but he did as his mother said and called out, "Lord of strength, come forth. Lord of strength, come to me." A fabulous beast appeared, shaped like a wolf, the Amarok. Before Kagsegsuk could run, the beast twisted its tail around the boy, throwing him to the ground. The bushes rustled. Unable to move, all he could do is watch his surroundings. Little bones, seal bones, fell from his body. The Amarok spoke. "It is because of these bones that thy growth has been stopped." Again the Amarok twisted its tail around the boy, knocking him over, and again more bones fell out. It was a third strike that knocked the remaining seal bones out of Kagsegsuk. Each time he would stand a little bit stronger. As the fourth swipe came, he barely tripped. Finally, on the fifth, Kagsegsuk did not fall. The Amarok told Kagsegsuk to return each day if he wished to become strong. On the way back to the village, Kagsegsuk felt lighter, running around, striking the sticks and the stones. But his good mood was soon to be ruined. As soon as he returned, the nursing woman threw mud at him, and the other boys assaulted him. Though lighter, Kagsegsuk did not fight back. He met the Amarok every day, and always underwent the same process. The boy felt stronger every day. At last the beast was not able to overthrow him. And then it spoke. "Now that will do. Human beings will not be able to conquer thee any more. Still thou hadst better stick to thy old habits. When winter sets in and the sea is frozen, then is thy time to show thyself. 3 great bears will appear and they shall be killed by thy hand." Kagsegsuk understood, and he ran back to the village. The abuse worsened more than ever. As the Amarok instructed, Kagsegsuk hid his strength, but that did not stop him entirely. In autumn, the kayakers returned with a large piece of driftwood. Due to its weight, it was left on the beach for the night. At nightfall, once everyone was asleep, he left to the beach. Once he arrived, Kagsegsuk threw the driftwood onto his shoulders and brought it up behind the house and buried it. The morning after, a loud kerfuffle began as the village tried to find their missing wood. An old lady was first to spot the buried timber. Everyone gathered. One impressed villager exclaimed how this was a mighty feat, that there must be an extraordinarily strong man among us. All the young men pretended that they could be the mysterious strong man, but they were all imposters to Cogsagsuk. Autumn passed and winter began. Finally, when the days began to lengthen, the 3 great bears had been spotted on a nearby iceberg. None of the proclaimed strong men volunteered to take care of the bears. No one did. Now was Cogsagsuk's time. He asked his mother for his boots to go see the bears. Unimpressed, she threw her boots at him and mocked that he should fetch her a skin for the couch and another for her coverlet in return. Jeered by the villagers and told that he was out of his wits, Cogsagsuk continued on to the iceberg. Cogsagsuk climbed the iceberg to face the first bear. After noticing him, the beast lifted its paw to swipe, but Cogsagsuk got hold of the animal's forepaw and flung the bear against the iceberg, severing the haunches from the body, and threw it down to the gathering crowd of onlookers below. He called down to them to flence away and divide, which means to take the skin and the blubber off the bear. The crowd thought that the second bear would surely kill him, but the battle repeated in similar fashion. The third bear he swung over his head into the crowd. Frightened, the crowd dispersed back to the village, bringing with them the story of Cogsagsuk's strength. Cogsagsuk returned to the shed with the 2 bearskins for his foster mother, exclaiming, "There is one for thy couch, and there is one for thy coverlet." He was summoned into the main hut, a place where he had previously been forbidden to enter. He mocked them, asking who would now lift him by his nostrils. None of the men replied. His mother helped him up. All the men had now become very civil to him, offering a seat to Cogsagsuk, but he declined. They offered him boots and breeches, and the girls rivaled each other in offering to make him clothes. Finally, Cogsagsuk had received the praise and human decency that he was deprived of his entire life, but alas, that would not be enough. And soon, Cogsagsuk and the rest of the village would learn how truly strong he was. When a young girl returned from fetching water for him, grateful, Cogsagsuk embraced her. All of a sudden, he squeezed her so hard that blood rushed out of her mouth. Instead of a response of horror, he mockingly said, "Why, I think she burst." Whether triggered by his first kill, or a deep bloodlust for all those who had abused him, he chose vengeance. When he spotted the other boys who assaulted him, he exclaimed, "What great seal hunters ye will make," at the same time seizing hold of them and crushing them to death. Others he killed by tearing their limbs asunder. Cogsagsuk went on attacking and putting to death all the inmates of the house, never stopping until the whole of them had perished by his hand. Only the poor people who had been kind to him he spared, and he lived with them, sharing the winter rations. After the village snow was painted red, he took the best of the kayaks and began to train himself. Each time he'd stray further and further from shore. Soon he went south and northwards in his kayak. He roamed all over the country, showing off his strength. Stories were told of him all over Greenland. Therefore, even nowadays, he is known all along the coast. The story of Cogsagsuk is one of the few historical retellings involving the Amarok. The story is featured in Tales and Traditions of the Eskimo in 1875. The story is a Greenlandic Inuit legend recorded by Henrik Johannes Rink. Rink was a Danish geologist who mapped the coast of Greenland, making it its first geological map. He lived among the Kalaaleet, who I am trying my best to say, but struggling even with a pronunciation guide, who are the largest group of Greenlandic Inuit. In-depth research on the Amarok is a difficult endeavor, as there is not a surplus of reliable documentation of the Amarok's origins, what it looks like, how many stories actually involve it. Most of the Inuit people's history is a traditional oral history, where most written records are narratives of foreign settlers, such as Rink. Even the Amarok's name is not cut and dry. The creature connected to the name changes with each story, depending on who's telling it. The Inuit people in the Arctic areas refer to the Arctic wolf as the Amarok, while many of the Inuit people of Greenland, the Amarok is a mythological wolf-like creature who plays the role of metaphorical animal intervention. It can be difficult to determine what creature is being referred to when the Amarok is mentioned. For example, the story of the Igloocock. There was once a man who watched his cousin and friend be devoured by a sorcery bear. Afterwards, he was fueled by despair. He went out to conquer all of the world's dangers. But first, he killed an Amarok. And after, when he returned home, a mysterious mourning stranger stopped by. And as the gracious host that the man was, he served up the boiled flesh of the Amarok. Apparently, the Amarok was very tasty, but before the stranger ate any, he called the dish a slope and ran out of the entrance. The man followed and examined the footsteps in the snow. The man determined it was an Igloocock, as there was only one side of the footprints, like a man whose body is only the one half of a human body, cut in twain. In this story, we do not know if the Amarok is just simply a wolf because of its brief mention. Previously, it mentioned sorcery bear, so there is some sort of magic, but does not specify if the Amarok is a magical beast as well. So it might just be an Arctic wolf, or it might be a mythical creature. Nobody actually ever sees the Amarok. One of the first written records of the Amarok is 1745's A Depiction of Greenland by Hans Edge, a Norwegian missionary. In Ed's experience, he remarks that the native people talk of an unseen ravenous beast. Edge determined that the animal must be a myth. In Proceedings of the Zoological Society of London in 1868, it featured a journal called On the Mammalian Fauna of Greenland by Robert Brown that spoke about the Amarok. Brown commented that Greenland could not be relied upon for the names of animals due to having several animals under the same name. So without context, it is very difficult to tell what is being talked about. Brown mentions hearing stories from the natives all over Greenland of the Amarok. One account of the Amarok is a man from Clawshaven who suggested that he was directly responsible for its existence. He said that he lost one of his dogs and he could not chase it down and catch it. And a year or so later, he found it again in a fox trap, and the animal had no longer been domesticated. And then that was the Amarok. Though the first account was over 100 years previously to this, it would be hilarious if the Amarok just came from one random man who lost his dog, and solely that was it. No great creature, simply a lost little pup. A more interesting account is a footnote about a native finding footprints of the Amarok in July 1867. A similar case in modern time, from March 2021's issue of Maclean's magazine, a giant wolf track was found in the Northwest Territories. Wolf paws range from 3.5 to 5.5 inches long, while the paw that was found was 7.5 inches long. The tracks were found by Ron Doctor, and I love how in the article they refer to Doctor found this to give it more credit, which is just, it's great. When we hear stories of folklore, of creatures that could not possibly be real, there's always that question of if they ever did exist, and in what form and how accurate to the legend. Nearly all my sources question if the Amarok is or ever was a real animal. Personally, I believe it's possible that the Amarok could have originated from stories warning of dire wolves told by early ancestors of the Inuit people. Warnings such as not to hunt alone at night and to not let your children into the woods alone. To add some credibility to my hypothesis, in early April 2023, an anatomical comparison and morphometric analysis of a crushed right lower jawbone found in Medicine Hat, Alberta, was shown to be from the dire wolf. These deposits are from the late Pliocene and is the only deposit found in Canada of the dire wolf. Though the dire wolf would have went extinct 10,000 years ago, there's evidence that people would have likely populated North America somewhere between 30 and 15,000 years ago. The possible overlap allows wiggle room to speculate on the reality of the legend. The Amarok often plays a role of metaphorical animal intervention. It is difficult to define its morality. It is more of an amoral character that holds animal motivations. In the case of Kagsegsuk, the Amarok helped a poor boy grow strong, but the outcome was a massacre of those who abused him. Another story from the Tales of the Eskimo shows the Amarok holding a neutral position by taking proportional revenge. A mourning man looking for excitement had heard where the Amarok was. Bringing a relative along, they made their way to the beast's location. They found the pups of the Amarok, and the mourner slaughtered them all. His relative, horrified, ran, followed by the mourner. They ended up in a cave as the Amarok returned with a reindeer between its jaws. The beast could not find its young. It rushed to the lake, hauling a human shape out of the water. The mourner collapsed dead. The Amarok discovered him and had taken the soul out of his body. From helping psychotic young men grow to being hunted by the mourners repeatedly. These were the stories of the Amarok, at least the ones with trackable sources. It's also my first YouTube video, so that's pretty nifty. Citations are down in the description below. Sad, yo shit.